Hey, Stephen, how are you?
I'm doing great, Doug. How are you doing today?
Doing fine, thank you. As we were talking about just before we got on, you're in New Jersey and getting hammered with snow, yeah?
Only 22 inches. It's not too
Ah,
bad.
that's nothing, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. So it's a big nor'easter. I was looking. I'm from Boston originally, but I live in Las Vegas now, so very used to all of that. Uh, I'm not sure if I miss it or not, but
No, you don't. You don't miss it.
yeah, I probably don't.
Don't. It gets gray really quickly. There's puddles in the corners. You have to do these leaps at every street corner, and then you miss a few, and then your foot gets dunked in ice water. No, you don't. You don't miss it.
Yeah, I think you're right. So you're an insurance guy? Is that what you do?
Well, I'm a lawyer.
You're a
I
lawyer, okay.
I am an attorney. I work for an insurance company. I negotiate around the country different kinds of cases, and I teach negotiation. So that is what I do for my day job.
Okay. What's your night job?
Well, my night job is I write books on crankiness. I blog on effective crankiness at my website, StephenJosephAuthor.com. And I have my book, first my kid's book, The Last Surviving Dinosaur, the Tyrannosaurus. And then there's a grown-up guide to effective crankiness, the Crankosaurus Method, which just came out last week, I believe.
Okay, that's the book I've got down here, and I've got a picture of the book cover. So why don't we talk a little bit about that? What made you decide to write that book?
Well, it goes back a little. I wasn't planning on writing books on crankiness, but I do have this negotiation background. I was in Rome with my girlfriend. We just arrived in the summertime a few years back, and it was a heat wave, and we were jet lagged, and we were tired, of course. And we get into this Airbnb apartment, and the electricity goes out. So now it's dark and hot, and my partner, my girlfriend, who I've been with for 8 years, she was dyeing her hair at the time. I don't know why, but she was. And she had this black dye going into her eye, and she got a little cranky. And it's one of those things when something goes wrong on vacation, you start to think like everything's going to go wrong. So she was continuing on with this crankiness. And finally, I called her a Tyrannosaurus. Now, to explain that, saurus is a Yiddish word because I'm a first-generation American. My parents are from Europe. My mother's a Holocaust survivor.
Oh,
And saurus is a Yiddish word for problems. You think you have saurus? Oh, if you have, I wish I had your saurus. No one could outdo my saurus. My saurus is the best. So I called her Tyrannosaurus, and I also said, well, that's probably how all the other big dinosaurs vanished. There's a little teeny dinosaur cranking out its saurus, so all the other big dinosaurs couldn't take it anymore, and they all dropped dead. So that became the story of my Last Surviving Dinosaur book. And after I was writing that, the word Crankosaurus became part of our relationship. So if I was feeling a little cranky, we gave it a name. I gave it a name. She gave it a name. We have a Crankosaurus in us. So what goes in the head doesn't go straight to the mouth. It goes into this little Crankosaurus box here, and it was very effective. I thought, wow, this is great. So I started writing my blog on effective crankiness, different things, and then all of a sudden it turned into a book. And I find that every week I just keep finding something else to write about on effective crankiness. So having a lot of fun with it.
so when you're talking about effective crankiness, is this about being selective as to what you're going to spout? Explain that a little bit more. I get the idea, but
Well, okay, so first of all, the one thing I always say is to I call it the common crankosaurus. So it's not like, so people say like, oh, you're cranky, and oh, well, why are you cranky? We are all cranky. So in my children's story, humans evolved from the Tyrannosaurus millions of years later, and that explains why we're cranky. We evolved from a cranky dinosaur. But I call the common crankosaurus. So if you think of the common cold, that you have like 1 or 2 in a year, maybe, a crankosaurus, you might have 2 or 3 in a day. So to know that it's something that everybody has, is 100% infection rate, and the thing is to have a name for it, a fun name that you could say, okay, I have this, and let it pass. And once you realize that, then you could start thinking about strategies like with your partner, or just even how you deal with things yourself, how to look at it a little differently. That it's not like, so one example, I have a can of worms crankosaurus, and I have a whole story in my book, a quick can of worms crankosaurus, and I have a story, but at the end I talk about, like, I don't understand what the big deal about a can of worms, opening up a can of worms is. What's the big deal? One worm crawls out, you put the other worm back in. It's not very complicated. But if you had a can of bees, you don't want to open up a can of bees because they could fly out, and of course you want all the bees to bite everyone around you, and it's not very good. So if you can imagine, just in that chapter, I say, imagine if those bees really were worms. Take a can, rub a little bit, make it into worms, and hey, opening up a can of worms isn't that bad after all. So you get an understanding of how to, like, one way to calm yourself down, or saying, okay, yep, I'm cranky, it's no problem. Another chapter I call Drive Me Crazy Crankosaurus. And again, this is something that everybody has. You have 2 sentences in your head. The 2 sentences start with like this. The first sentence is it drives me crazy when, and then you fill in the blank. And the next sentence always comes afterwards, I cannot understand how. And I have this whole story how people relate to each other, and each person has that it drives me crazy experience. Again, realizing that, hey, this is, everybody's driven crazy. It's just one of those things, and maybe I don't have to be crazy. And just by understanding that, you feel empowered, you don't feel helpless. And my book really talks about that in so many different ways, in so many different situations. There's like 41 chapters just in the book alone, a lot more on my blog, stories provide an anchor for the person, with just a little, something to stick in your toolkit.
I want to go back to the can of worms, can of bees for a second. One of the things that I've always been amazed about when I've had arguments with my wife is that it will start like that. It'll start with something piddly. I can remember a few years ago we had one about moving the toaster in the kitchen, because I came down in the morning to make some toast and the toaster was completely in a different place, and I got upset about it because I like things where they are, where I remember them. And then this thing spiraled into stuff that I did 10 years ago that she was still apparently angry about. And I mean, this was like the biggest can of bees I've ever seen in my life. Why do people do that? Why do people connect things that have nothing to do with what we're talking about, and it just goes completely out of control?
Well, the lawyer person in me will, and I have a chapter called Crankosaurus Madness, that like people like to litigate their grievances.
That's a good way to put it. Yeah. Okay.
And I even talk about a seminar I gave to defense lawyers, and the seminar, the exercise I gave the defense lawyers was that somebody's mad at you, your partner is mad at you, and your objective is to try to make that other person no longer mad. So and part of that, I said you could only use legal defenses that you would use in a normal case. So just one easy example: you're mad at me, I'm the one who should be mad at you, and that is like a counterclaim. You bring a claim against me, I'm bringing a claim against you. And I talk about in that chapter, one of the things lawyers, when I manage lawyers, so they'll tell me we have to fight fire with fire. And I go, oh, this is an interesting thing, fighting fire with fire. So I said I went to the firehouse and I saw a fireman there, and I asked him, what high impact explosives do you use to put out a fire? Like, do you use premium unleaded gasoline or do you use unleaded gasoline? And the fireman looked at me like I was crazy, and he said, we actually use water. Could you believe it? Water. So when I talk to lawyers, just in terms of defending cases, I said, where's our water? If somebody files a lawsuit, that's the fire. And you want to always bring out the water in that to put out the fire. And I talk about just in relationships, you can't really put out a Crankosaurus fire with a Crankosaurus fire. So that's something that I give people to think about. It's a lot about listening, and I hear that you're upset. I understand, and yeah, that would piss me off too if I was you. I feel your pain, sort of thing, and then move from there. Not trying to raise the temperature, but you're lowering the temperature.
I think that's valid, although at a certain point you feel like you're just being beaten down and you're not defending yourself. You can take it for so long and say, okay, I'm sorry, I understand, yeah, blah, 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 blah. But it gets to a point where you just say, you know what? And then you get the flamethrower out. So I don't know. It's a hard balance. It's not an easy thing to manage.
It's a hard balance. It's a hard balance. And again, another chapter, I call it Crankosaurus Kryptonite. And and I talk about we all have our buttons. There's and I know that I have a certain button, and you just press that, and it's tough. It's tough, but you call it. I call it the kryptonite. It's my kryptonite, and but the thing is that everybody has a kryptonite, their own kryptonite, and again, it's partly having empathy and mindfulness, together, and in that chapter I talk about like Superman. He almost gets killed with this. He gets weak. He can't do anything with the kryptonite. And in the old Superman shows, Jimmy Olsen and Lois Lane don't say, oh, geez, like Superman was kryptonite again. We're going to have to find a new superhero. The fact is we all have that kryptonite. It's tough. It's not easy. It's not easy. But again, giving people things to think about when they have choices. And again, saying, yeah, I'm cranky, but maybe I'll just go into a room. Maybe maybe we'll do some improvisation where I could even have fun with it when we're calm. So maybe now is not the time. So I've been in relationships. It drives me crazy, Crankosaurus. It's like when I like to wind down when I go to sleep. And my partner will bring up something that a problem. We're just about to go to sleep. I want a good bedtime story. I don't want to have this problem to start the day. Start before
to finish the day. Yeah.
Finish the day. Yes, to finish the day. So that's one of those things I never really care for. So again, to bring it up. And not to if that's going to be my kryptonite, how can I do that a little bit differently? that, and it's really to understand. No one's going to say, no, I want to raise the temperature. We sleep a lot better when we raise the temperature. No, maybe he's right, and maybe we could work on this. Maybe we could lower the temperature. Maybe I could do something differently, and deal with it a little bit better. And I mentioned that, and I've been heard. And hey, that's pretty good.
Stephen, we got to wrap this up. Unfortunately, our time is up. Do you have a website that you want to give out where people can check you out and check out the books?
StephenJosephAuthor.com. All the stories are not only helpful on crankiness, but a lot of them, all of them are hysterically funny. So you will be entertained by going to the blog section on StephenJosephAuthor.com.
Great. Thanks so much for coming on. It was nice meeting you. And
well, thanks for having me, Doug.
Very enlightening. I may have learned something about